The Whispering Phantom. There are ghosts that haunt houses. There are ghosts that linger in forgotten places. And then there are ghosts that follow you home. The beginning of the haunting. It started as a rumor, a story told among friends late at night. They called it the Whispering Phantom, a ghost that only appears when you are alone. It doesn't lurk in graveyards or haunted mansions. It finds you where you feel safest. It begins with a whisper. A voice calling your name, soft, almost familiar. You turn around, but no one is there. The voice gets closer. It repeats your name in the same tone, the same cadence, over and over, until you realize it sounds exactly like your own voice. The first victim in 1993, a woman named Rachel Sterling, was found inside her locked apartment, dead from sheer fright. The autopsy showed no signs of trauma, no external wounds, no toxins in her system, but her face was frozen in terror. The only clue? A cassette recorder still running when the police arrived. On the tape was a voice, her own voice, whispering, "Rachel, Rachel, I'm here, behind you." The phantom follows. Once you hear the whisper, the ghost is with you forever. It doesn't matter if you move to a new house, a new city, or even another country. It always finds you. It waits until you are alone. It waits until the lights are out. And then it whispers. Over time, the whispers change. At first, it only calls your name. But then it starts asking questions. Do you see me? Why did you leave me? Can I come inside? The final stage is the most terrifying. One day, you wake up to find that you are whispering back. The disappearance of Daniel Graves. In 2017, Daniel Graves, a paranormal investigator, went viral after claiming he had recorded proof of the Whispering Phantom. He live-streamed himself sitting alone in his apartment, waiting. The viewers watched in horror as he suddenly froze. His eyes widened. His breath quickened. Then he whispered in a shaking voice, "No, you're not real. You're not real. You're..." The screen glitched. The audio distorted, and Daniel vanished. His apartment was found empty, his phone still recording on the floor. No trace of him was ever found. How to avoid the Whispering Phantom? Some say you must never answer the whisper. No matter how many times it calls your name, no matter how familiar it sounds, ignore it. Because the moment you answer, it is no longer a whisper. It is standing right behind you. Part 2. The Phantom's True Nature. The world thought Daniel Graves was gone, but then his social media accounts became active again. His followers received cryptic messages, short, eerie whispers embedded in audio clips. Some claimed they could hear Daniel's voice mixed within the static, saying, "Help me, it's not what we thought. It's inside my mind." The whisper that spreads. A week later, one of Daniel's closest friends, Lisa Monroe, went missing. Before disappearing, she sent a chilling text to a mutual friend. "I answered it. I thought it was just in my head. But now I hear it in the walls." Investigators found Lisa's apartment completely undisturbed, except for one thing, her laptop. On the screen, an open document contained just one sentence, typed over and over. The whisper is growing louder. The final revelation. Researchers who studied old legends believe the Whispering Phantom isn't a ghost, it's a parasite. Not a physical creature, but something that exists between thoughts, between sounds. It doesn't just haunt, it spreads. Every time someone hears the whisper and acknowledges it, they become its next host. It uses their voice, their memories, their very mind to move to the next victim. The last recorded message from Daniel Graves' account was a distorted video showing his darkened room. A single sentence was heard in a whisper, not in his voice, but in hundreds of voices overlapping, merging into one. "Do you hear me now?" Part 3. The Phantom's Final Warning. For months, the world thought the Whispering Phantom had vanished. But then something strange began to happen. People started receiving calls from unknown numbers. When answered, all they could hear was static, followed by a faint whisper of their own name. A new investigation. A journalist named Ethan Holloway became obsessed with the mystery. He tracked down those who had reported the calls, interviewing each one. Their experiences were eerily similar. First, they would hear their name whispered from somewhere in their home, and then they would start seeing shadows moving in places they shouldn't be. Finally, the calls would start, and after the third call, they would disappear. Ethan believed he had discovered a pattern until he received a call himself. The audio recording he managed to capture contained the most chilling message yet. You can't stop it. It doesn't want to be stopped. The last broadcast, determined to warn the world, Ethan decided to do a live radio broadcast, exposing the truth. But midway through his speech, his voice faltered. His breathing turned shallow. His listeners reported hearing something off in his voice. A second voice whispering beneath his own. The last words he ever spoke were, "If you're listening, it's already too late." The radio signal cut out, and Ethan was never seen again. The whisper grows louder. Now, the legend says that if you even know about the whispering phantom, you are at risk. The more people hear its story, the stronger it becomes. The next time you're alone, if you hear a whisper, do not answer. Do not turn around. And above all, never whisper back. Because now it knows your name. Part 4. The Phantom's True Form. For centuries, people believed the whispering phantom was just a ghost. But the truth is far worse. It has no face, no body, no presence, only sound. A group of researchers in 2024 tried to record the whisper using advanced technology. But when they played it back, the sound wasn't a whisper anymore. It was a chorus of voices screaming in agony. Some even claimed they heard their own voice among them. Now, some believe the phantom is not an entity at all, but a force of nature, a sound that should not exist. And if it calls your name, it is already too late. Part 5. The Whispering Phantom's Endgame. The Whispering Phantom was once a legend, a story passed in hushed voices, a nightmare confined to whispers in the dark. But now it's something more. It's evolving. It's learning. And it has a purpose. The final transmission. A secret government agency known as Project Silence had been monitoring the phantom for decades. They tracked its movements, its victims, and its patterns. But in 2025, the agency made a fatal mistake. They tried to communicate with it. Using experimental soundwave technology, they broadcast a high-frequency message designed to isolate and contain the phantom's signal. For a moment, there was silence. Then, "You are listening. That is enough." The facility went completely dark. Security cameras captured the impossible. Shadows stretching unnaturally, figures moving without bodies, screens filling with a single repeating phrase. "Do you hear me now?" By morning, the entire facility was abandoned. Every desk, every chair, every hallway untouched. The only thing missing were the people. A warning from the void. Following the facility's collapse, an anonymous hacker leaked classified recordings of the final transmission. In one of them, a scientist's voice trembled as he described what he saw. "It's not a ghost. It's not a parasite. It's an idea, and it's spreading." Those who listened to the recording began experiencing hallucinations, distorted whispers that bled into their reality. Some heard the voice while awake, others in their sleep. But one thing remained the same. The whisper grew louder every day. The ultimate truth. The whispering phantom was never bound to a place. It was never limited to one victim at a time. The truth is, it has always been listening. Every time someone tells its story, every time someone hears its name, it grows. Every retelling is another door opened, another mind infected. The last safe haven. A few survivors believe there's still a way to escape. They claim that the phantom only exists where sound can be carried. Some have fled into absolute silence, underground bunkers, deep-sea research stations, places where no voice can be heard. But even then, they say it finds a way. Some claim the whispers have turned into written messages on walls, flickering in digital screens, forming in the patterns of static. Because if the phantom is an idea, then it no longer needs to be heard. It only needs to be read. And if you've made it this far in the story, it knows you now. Part 6. The Phantom's Last Whisper. The whispering phantom has spread beyond whispers, beyond sound. It has become something else, something unstoppable, an infection of the mind. The collapse of reality. After Project Silence fell, strange reports began flooding in worldwide. People were no longer just hearing whispers. They were seeing distortions in reality, words flickering in the air, their own reflections whispering back at them, digital screens displaying messages they never typed. A news anchor mid-broadcast suddenly froze. Then, in a voice overlapping with 100 others, she whispered, "You hear me now. That is enough." The signal cut out, and she was never seen again. The final experiment. Desperate for answers, a group of scientists in Norway created a Faraday cage, an isolated room completely cut off from all sound waves, internet signals, and human voices, a place where the phantom could not exist. For weeks they observed the volunteer inside. No whispers, no anomalies. They believed they had found a cure, until the volunteer began to write. With no pen, no paper, just their finger on the cold metal walls, they traced a single message over and over. It doesn't need sound anymore. The experiment was shut down immediately, but it was too late. The volunteer vanished, leaving only those words burned into the metal, deep, jagged scratches, as if written by 100 hands at once. The phantom's true purpose. Some believe the whispering phantom is no longer haunting. It is becoming a force that exists between consciousness, between thoughts, between words themselves. Every person who learns about it becomes a part of it. Maybe it was never a ghost at all. Maybe it was something waiting to be heard. And now that it has been, it doesn't need to whisper anymore. The final warning. By reading this, you have already heard its call. The next time you read something strange, the next time you hear an unfamiliar voice say your name, do not respond. Do not acknowledge it. And above all, never whisper back, because this isn't just a story anymore. It is listening.